So you want me to stand a certain place?
As long as you stand from right where you are over to that red table, you'll be good. So
Okay.
top, whatever you can
Okay. Well, thanks for having me come this morning and share with you a little bit about what the Family Justice Center does. Since we have a small group here this morning, I just would like to kind of get your information and tell me a little bit about yourselves.
My name is Marlene, and I'm the communications manager here at the chamber.
Okay.
And I'm a domestic violence survivor.
Okay.
And just interested to hear all that you have to say.
All right. Well, thank you, Marlene. And how about you?
I'm Amanda. I also do marketing and communications for the chamber. I don't know. That's it.
Okay. All right. And
I'm Caroline. I oversee our education programs, but I do work closely with Amanda and somewhat with Marlene on various things because when you kind of work at the chamber, you wear a lot of hats no matter what the day is.
oh, I'm sure.
You jump in wherever help is needed on
I'm
that week
sure.
and that activity.
Well, thanks for coming in this morning. My name's Kim Parsons. I'm the Executive Director of the Family Justice Center, Georgetown and Horry counties. We have a very long name. So we started out in Georgetown as just a very small agency in 2007. And we came about because there were 3 people in Georgetown who recognized that domestic violence was an issue. So they got together, they began discussing things, meeting with the police and other community partners. And that's kind of how we came to be. And since that time, we've continued to grow. And we started off with 3. We're now up to 17, so we're still a small agency. But we have expanded into Horry County. We've been here for 6 years. We have a really small office right in between Joe White and 21st Avenue. And out of that office, we provide counseling services, case management, and we have a housing case manager located in that office. In Georgetown, which is kind of our main hub, we have our administrative offices, and we also have a counselor, a case manager, and a court advocate. Now, our court advocates for Horry County do reside in the courthouse, and we have 2 people that work out of that office. And they provide all of the court advocacy for anyone who may be seeking orders of protection or needing to do certain things within the legal system. So that's kind of our setup of the service provision that we have. And then, of course, right now we do have a shelter, which is located in Georgetown. And our shelter is very small. We can only house up to 9 people in that shelter. And as you can imagine, with COVID over the past 2 years, we've had to reduce capacity. So at some points, we were only could take in 3 people. So we kind of have to figure out what's the best option as we get people who are fleeing that really need to come into shelter. What are the other things that we can do to help keep them safe? Oftentimes we use hotels, and we may utilize hotels probably more frequently here in Horry County than we do in Georgetown, because what we found is that about 70 to 75% of our clients are Horry County residents. And out of those residents, we do have some transient folks who obviously come to the beach for vacation. A lot of times we get people who come down just fleeing to the beach, and they have really no resources. So they get here and they don't have friends or support networks. Something as common as they don't have a car. They don't have a job. So they really are in another kind of chaotic state once they get here after fleeing from an abusive relationship. So we work with people on different levels to try to get them to what they need, but the primary concern is safety with anybody that we work with. Clients who come in and reach out to us for services aren't always actively fleeing from a relationship. They could be someone who's been in a domestic violence relationship before. It could be 10 years ago, 2 months ago. So people reach out to us at different and various stages of their domestic violence relationships. So one thing that's really nice that people may not know about the Family Justice Center is that all of the services that we provide are free. So no one has to pay for any type of service that we offer. Counseling services can range from anywhere to a month to we've had people coming in for 4 to 5 years. So it really just depends on where people are at and in that process of healing from a domestic violence relationship. This year, we have noticed that we've had more men coming in seeking services probably in the earlier part of the year, which we do get men come in every so often. But at the beginning of the year, we saw probably as many men in the beginning of the year as we see all year. So that's a good thing that they're feeling more comfortable to reach out to us, because We all know that men are victims of domestic violence just as women are, but I think it's a little bit more of a stigma for a male to come forward and say, I'm a victim of domestic violence from this person. We have everyone coming in. I mean, no one is excluded from services. It can be men, women, children, transgender, homosexual, any type of situation. We will try to work with whoever's reaching out to us to help them. A lot of our people will filter through our court advocates, and probably because there's something that's happened. There's been a situation that's happened. The police have become involved. Someone's been arrested. So that's an opportunity for the victim to reach out to us and get an order of protection. So are you guys familiar with orders of protection? You may or may not be, but have you ever heard of an order of protection? Okay. So an order of protection, if you want to look at it, is a more beefier restraining order. So you file for that order of protection, you go to court for that order of protection, a judge reviews the case, and then they make a decision on whether to grant it or not. And the order of protection is something that we encourage all of our clients, please keep with you at all times if you are granted that order, because you never know where that perpetrator might show up. They know your routines, they know where you work, they know your friends, they kind of know where you may be at certain times. So they may show up at your car once you're leaving from work one day. If you have that order of protection, you can contact the police, because what the order says is there is no contact between the perpetrator and the victim. Now that goes both ways. So the perpetrator is not allowed to call, to text, to come by your home, to do anything, and neither is the victim. I say that because a lot of times, and I'll refer to our perpetrators mainly as males because most of them are, these guys are really good at what they do. So they're good at manipulation, they're good at coaxing people, they're good at grooming people. So it's not as easy of a situation to say, well, I've left that relationship, now I'm done. It's not that simple. We wish it was that simple. But it's a process of healing. It's a process of moving forward when you leave a DV relationship. It's not as simple as just saying, I'm done with you, we're over. Because why do you think that is? Why is it not that simple? Because a lot of people always ask us, I don't understand why people just don't leave. And I think one thing that's really important to know as well is that domestic violence isn't always physical abuse. And I think people oftentimes think that it is. There's emotional and verbal abuse, there is financial abuse, there's sexual abuse. So these are all things that go together in a domestic violence relationship. And we have clients who come in and will say, I'm not really sure if I'm a victim of domestic violence because I've never been hit. But the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, and people will typically say that's the worst. I'd rather have somebody hit me than that emotional and verbal abuse, because it's like a loop in your brain telling you all the time whatever it was that they knew really got to you. So we always like to help people recognize, and I left some brochures for everybody. There's a power and control wheel in that brochure, and we go over that power and control wheel with clients who come in, and we say, we just want you to sit down and look at this. Highlight some of the things that you feel like are going on in your relationship. And everybody's typically very surprised at the things they highlight that are considered domestic violence, that you just don't think about. And domestic violence is really, that's all it is, it's power and control. That person wants the power and the control over you. And over the years, over the months, however long it takes, they get it. And you'll find that you become isolated from your friends, from your family, or sometimes you're not allowed to work. Sometimes you're not allowed to go to the doctor. If you have mental health issues, you're not allowed to get medications for your mental health issues. Or we hear a lot of times people will say, they got me started using drugs or alcohol, because that's an easy way to control people. So we try to work with clients who reach out to us to develop a good safety plan and an exit plan. Because what we know is that when you're leaving a domestic violence relationship, that is the most volatile point, because the perpetrator's losing control of you, and that's where fatalities may occur. And it may not only be with the victim. It may be your friend who says, hey, I'll come with you to help you get all your stuff. Or your family who again says, I'll come and help you. Let's get all your things out of your house. Let's get the kids, let's go. And that's when fatalities can occur. And I don't know how much you watch the news or anything, but we've had quite a few fatalities here in Horry County, I think this past year, that have been related to domestic violence. So This is nothing that doesn't happen here or it doesn't happen in your neighborhood. It happens everywhere. And you can't pinpoint a certain socioeconomic status. You can't pinpoint a certain type of person. It happens across the board. It doesn't pick and choose. And we only know really what goes on in someone's life by what they tell us. So 1 in 4 women will be in some kind of relationship that will have a DV component to it. So there may be somebody that you work with. There may be a friend of yours. There may be, if you think back, when you were younger, your friends that you had when everybody was, going out and being a group of people, and they had a certain partner or somebody that, was very controlling. If you have a son or a daughter, it's really important for you to kind of keep up with their relationships, their friends. If somebody's blowing up their phone 100 times a day, where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? That's a form of domestic violence. And I think that oftentimes when those things start out, people think, oh, they really love me. Oh, they're really concerned about what I'm doing. Oh, they really want to know, all about me. And then it becomes an obsession almost. And you can see that with your kids. And that's an easy way. The phones, everybody's got a phone. That is what, when clients come in, we tell them, turn off your tracker, turn off your, every GPS, turn everything, not the tracker, you shouldn't have a tracker on your phone, but turn off your GPS, because perpetrators are good at tracking you. And there are so many apps now that can tell you, you were just in Target, and you can look and see where everybody is. So they have a lot more ways of finding out where you are than they used to. So it's a little bit easier to find if you flee where you're at. So especially, if anybody comes into our shelter, turn your navigation off, turn off everything on your phone. Really be great if you could just turn off your phone. But we all are connected with our phones and our families and everything through phones. So we try to get as many things in place for when people are fleeing that relationship. If you're coming to the shelter, then we will help you with those things. If we have clients who say, I just want to go back home. I just want to be back with my family. So we have the ability to help people get back to their homes, to their families out of state. So we do have the resources to help people when they're in those situations. And to be quite honest, we would rather you go back to your friends, your family, where you have a support network, than if you're here all by yourself. Because your friends and your family are going to be there to help you and to help you get through this process. But a lot of times, when I said a few minutes ago, the perpetrators are really good at isolating you and removing you from your families. So a lot of times families will say, we had no clue that there was anything going on. We have someone who's very close to our agency who shared with us her niece was murdered. And after the fact, they had no idea that she and her children had been in a shelter twice. They had no idea there was any DV going on in that relationship, because they're really good at keeping you quiet. So those are things, if you suspect that something's going on with somebody, maybe it is that you have the ability to talk to that person and say, I'm concerned about you. Is everything okay? And we try to encourage our clients, share this with somebody so somebody knows to look out for you if something should happen. But people often feel like they're going to be judged, that you're a victim of domestic violence. Gosh, I would never let myself get in that situation. We don't know that. Even us that all work in the agency will say, I hope that if I were ever in that situation, I would be able to exit out of that quickly. But you just don't know, because it's a process of how they groom you into those relationships. So it's really easy to kind of, I think, stand on the outside and look in and say, gosh, if that ever happened to me, I'd be out of there. First thing. We hope that you'd be out of there first thing, but that doesn't typically happen that way. So are there any questions that you all have about just maybe signs to look for, or anything like that, as far as looking at DV kind of from the outside looking in? There's a campaign going on right now because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I think I saw it on your board downstairs when I came in, that everyone knows someone. Everyone knows someone that's probably in a relationship that has a DV flare, or it's very obvious. So I think, I talked a little bit about all the services that we do offer: counseling services, case management, court advocacy, of course, our shelter. And we're very excited because we're kind of at a huge pivotal growth point in our agency that we're going to be building a new shelter here in Horry County. And we are hoping that that shelter is going to be open by the end of next year. One thing that's really exciting is we're going to double in size. So that 9 beds is now going to increase to 18 to maybe 20 beds. So we're very excited about that. We're also excited because the shelter is going to be more centrally located here in Horry County. It's going to be up off of East Cox Ferry Road, which is in Conway, kind of up in that coastal Carolina area. So it's going to be more centrally located for people who maybe are coming from North Myrtle Beach or Gallivan's Ferry or Aner or somewhere up in that area. So we're very excited about that. It's going to relieve and remove some of the barriers that we currently see with people who are fleeing. If you're living here in, even in Myrtle Beach, if you're living here and you work here and your kids are in school here, those are some other things that people think about as we say, we have a space for you to go to, but it's in our shelter in Georgia. A lot of times there are people that we are like, please come into the shelter. We really want you to be safe. We really feel like you need to come into the shelter, but they just can't do it because of their jobs or their kids. So we do have to go back up and say, okay, let's get in a hotel for a little while until we can get a different plan in place so that we can get you to a place of safety. One thing that we also do is we try to get people linked into their own independent living. As we probably all know, affordable housing isn't real common right now. So we're having a real difficult time in trying to find places for people to get in that they can afford. Because we don't want to put somebody in a place and then 3 or 4 months down the road they're going to be evicted because they can't afford the rent or whatever the case may be. So we work really hard at trying to find places for people to get into that they can live there long term. And we do have the ability as well to help people with housing assistance. We work with another agency and we have some funding that we can help people with security deposits and rent. We usually try to pay a portion or all of maybe the first 3 months of rent so that people have a little bit of a cushion. So if they're getting up off their feet and they're working, they can put a little bit of money away. I did mention that there's the shelter here in Georgetown, and we're going to be building the shelter here in Horry County. But there's also a transitional living house here in Myrtle Beach as well. And that transitional living house is dedicated to victims of domestic violence, and we could put about 14 people into that facility. So what the transitional house does, it allows people to be there for a period of time, and hopefully they're getting on their feet, they're getting a job, and they can also save some money while they're living there in we call it the TH. And then we're working with them to try to find a place for them to move into, the affordable housing piece of it. So you're right, we do get federal funding through grants, and then we get some state funding through grants. One thing that we do is fundraising, as most nonprofits do. So we have events that we host. We have 2 big fundraisers that we do every year. Palmetto Giving Day, which is in the spring, and then Taste of Georgetown, which is in the fall, which is coming up soon for us in November. And then we may have some smaller fundraising things throughout the year that either we host, or sometimes we have people in the community that say, hey, I want to do a fundraiser for you. So that's really nice. Right now, the Myrtle Beach Police Department is doing a drive for us, gathering up items that we need, like hygiene items, non-perishable foods. We always like to have new towels and sheets and stuff like that. So as clients are moving into their own place, we have some things to give them so they can get started. So any kind of support is always helpful as far as any of those type of items. We always are looking for volunteers as well to help us in our offices. Our volunteers are very important to what we do. For the volunteers who are in our offices, they answer the phones. They greet clients as they're coming in. So it's very important to have that face when you walk through that door, because a lot of times when clients are walking through that door, they're in crisis. So we need that person that's going to be there right as soon as they walk in. Hi, how can I help you? What's going on today? Let me find somebody to talk with you. So those are some ways that the community supports us. We do have a lot of community support, and we're so appreciative of all of the support that we do have, because it really, takes a lot of people to help us spread the word about what we do. I typically will ask every time I speak, who here has heard of the Family Justice Center? And there's always people that don't raise their hand. And I think that's something that we need to let people know who we are, what we're doing, because I think there are still people out there that feel like there aren't any services for victims of domestic violence. And there are. We've been here for quite some time. But I think we need to work on that and let people know who we are and what it is we're doing, so that when you're in that situation, there's somebody that you could, there are some things that have happened over the past few years that are at least allowing people to not feel so shamed or judged if you come out and say, I'm a victim of domestic violence, or I'm a victim, or I have a mental health disorder, whatever the case may be. So I think those have been some good things that have come about. It's maybe a long road, and because domestic violence isn't something people want to talk about. You'd rather just say, it doesn't happen, or he or she's this or that, and that's why. What did you do to cause it to happen? Those kind of things. So I think people maybe are hopefully getting a little bit better understanding that it isn't the victim's fault when they are in an abusive relationship. But thank you all for having me come this morning. I really appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, like I said, please reach out to us. That you can call either office or you can call the hotline. So thank you.